The four of them waited anxiously in front of the building. An hour passed, yet the second phase of the game still hadn't begun. Had someone forgotten to press the start button, or had they skipped explaining the rules and just started it outright? Usagi suddenly heard a strange sound. The four turned toward the direction she indicated, only to see a swarm of cars approaching and surrounding them. These people were all from the beach. They'd heard the second phase was about to start and had come to check it out. At that moment, a deafening blast rang out. One person was blown to pieces, followed by a second, then a third. Realizing something was terribly wrong, everyone fled. Chishiya recognized the sound of an anti-tank rifle. Its firepower was so immense that even hiding in a car would be useless. Could this be the signal that the game had started? No rules, just slaughter. Before the anti-tank rifle fire ceased, the sound of assault rifles echoed through the air. Arisu suggested splitting up to escape, as it would increase their chances of survival. But no matter where they ran, there were people and gunshots. Worst of all, they had no idea where the shots were coming from or how many attackers there were. After a while, the gunfire stopped and an airship appeared. Their mission this time was the King of Spades. Arisu and Usagi prepared to flee, but along the way, they found someone who was barely alive. Overcome with compassion, Arisu wanted to help, but a figure appeared in the distance, seeming to be the one behind the killings. The four regrouped, but before they could come up with a plan, a car pulled up to pick them up. The others got in one after another, but just as Chishiya was about to board, he spotted a grenade. He hurried to tell the others to leave first. Everyone was now completely confused, unsure how this game worked. In Arisu's view, the figure they'd seen earlier must be the boss. Though there was only one of him, the difficulty was hell level and the entire city was the battlefield. Meanwhile, the people in another car were complacent, thinking they'd escaped and could go home. Little did they know, the boss was right behind them. The entire carload was quickly wiped out. The boss got into their car and soon caught up to Arisu and the others. Tension spiked instantly. The boss attacked while chasing them. With no weapons to fight back, they could only run. The boss clung to them like glue, impossible to shake off. They crashed their car midway. Luckily, no one was hurt, but the boss was still hot on their heels, and the slaughter didn't stop. They ran again, finally taking shelter in a building at last. The gunshots faded, and they were temporarily safe. Chishiya and Anne split off from the group temporarily. With their skills, they wouldn't die quickly. Waiting around doing nothing wasn't an option, so they divided into two teams. One to find a car, the other to scavenge for food. They soon got both and continued on their way. At dawn, Arisu climbed to a high spot to observe. The other airships were stationary, only the one marked King of Spades was moving. The boss's firepower was too fierce. They couldn't defeat him for now. But running endlessly wasn't a solution either. They needed to switch tactics and join another game. Each game had its own rules, and if games interfered with each other, all would collapse. They could look for clues while playing other games to figure out how this world operated. That was their only chance of survival. The King of Clubs game was the farthest from them, so Arisu decided to start there. Club games focused on teamwork, giving them a better chance of winning. Once the plan was set, they acted on it immediately. The four headed straight for the King of Clubs game venue. The venue was surrounded by shipping containers, and the entrance was locked. A notice next to it stated, "No weapons allowed." There were 4 bracelets on the table, but the game required 5 players. They only had 4 what to do. Just then, Naragi appeared behind them, still alive. The 4 didn't want to team up with him, but he'd already put on a bracelet. They had no choice. There was no time to go elsewhere, so they had to grit their teeth and proceed. After all put on their bracelets, the entrance opened. The 5 entered one by one, and the door closed again. The game area was an open space. As they stood still, people appeared from different directions, all wearing bracelets. A naked man greeted them. He was the King of Clubs, Hisashi. Arisu's team had 5 people, and Hisashi's team also had 5. He introduced his team members, Suki, Shiki, and Go. Arisu asked about their true identities. Were they game designers or administrators? Hisashi's answer took Arisu by surprise. They were citizens of this country. Before coming here, they'd been a band. Now, they were a team. Suki had designed this game, and it was their first time playing it too. Hisashi also revealed a crucial detail. All face card games were life or death battles against the citizens of this country. Losing meant death, so they would show no mercy. Next came the game introduction. The theme was infiltration. The rule was to compete for points within 2 hours. The team with the highest score would win. Both teams started with 10,000 points, which they needed to distribute among their members before the game began. Distribution was flexible, but each member must have at least 100 points. Hisashi gave a subtle hint. The initial point distribution was extremely important. There were 3 ways to earn points. If opposing players made physical contact, a duel would trigger. The player with more points would win and take 500 points from the loser. The total team score would change accordingly. Duels could also involve multiple players. For example, if two teammates joined forces, their combined points would be used for the duel. This tactic could defeat opponents that one person alone couldn't. The 500 points won this way would be split equally between the two teammates. 2 items. 6 items were hidden in the shipping containers. Touching an item would grant additional points. 3. Base. The marker in front of Arisu's team was their base, while Hisashi's base was at the other end. Touching the opponent's base would earn 10,000 points. Touching one's own base would amplify the player's points infinitely. If a duel occurred in this state, the player could directly take 10,000 points from the opponent. However, if a player's points turned negative, they would die. It was a balance of risk and opportunity. There was also a special condition. After a duel, players would enter an invalid state, where they couldn't gain or lose points. In this state, touching an opponent's bracelet would release a powerful electric shock, which could knock someone unconscious in severe cases. Touching one's own base would end the invalid state. With the rules explained, Hisashi prepared to lead his team back to their base. Arisu suddenly asked, if they cleared all games, could they return to the real world? Hisashi told him to think carefully. What was the real world? The place they used to live in, or the one they were in now? The old world was full of deception and intrigue, while the current world allowed people to be open and honest with each other. He couldn't reveal more. If Arisu wanted the truth, he had to fight with all his might in the game. Next, the team needed to figure out how to distribute points. Guessing randomly wouldn't work, they needed a strategy. Fast runners would get fewer points, slow runners more, and weaker members only the minimum 100 points. They split into 2 groups, one with high points, one with low. During duels, teammates could join forces, and their combined points would be displayed, preventing opponents from guessing individual scores. Usagi and Naragi paired up and soon encountered Shiki. Together, they had 5,000 points. Since Hisashi's team had 5 members, it was impossible for any single one of them to have over 5,000 points. They had a good chance of winning. But when Shiki saw them charging, he ran away at top speed. Usagi might have caught up alone, but with Naragi, it was impossible. They had to give up. Arisu and Kuina were searching for items and got lucky. They found one, pressed the button, and gained 2,000 points. A great start. But as soon as they closed the container door, they ran into Hisashi. Arisu had 4,600 points, Kuina 2,300 together, 6,900. They shouldn't have been afraid of a duel. Yet Hisashi didn't back down. His confidence made them nervous. Suddenly, Arisu let go of Kuina's hand and decided to duel Hisashi one-on-one. The result came quickly. Hisashi only had 2,000 points. Arisu won, gained 500 points, and entered the invalid state. This one-on-one wasn't impulsive, it was a calculated move. Arisu wanted to see Hisashi's points to guess how the opposing team had distributed theirs. 2,000 points suggested an even split, and Hisashi didn't deny it. His team believed in equality. They would either live together or die together. On the other side, Usagi saw this and deliberately lured Shiki over. When Shiki realized he was facing 2 people, he ran, but it was too late. Physical contact was made. Usagi and Naragi won, gaining another 500 points. At the same time, Arisu and Kuina caught Shiki and earned 500 more points. The game was going surprisingly smoothly, and the group began to think that king-level games weren't so terrifying after all. They returned to their base to refresh their scores and discuss their next move, only for Naragi to suddenly cough up blood. Hisashi's team, though off to a bad start, maintained a good team atmosphere. They realized their current approach wouldn't lead to victory and needed to change their plan. Soon after, Arisu's team found another item, adding 1,000 points. But before they could celebrate, Hisashi's team attacked their base. It was a ruthless move. Ryuta immediately touched their base, amplifying his points infinitely. Anyone who approached would die. This was a life or death game, and it was up to Ryuta to decide who would perish. 4 members of Hisashi's team charged toward the base at once. 1 failed, 3 succeeded. The scores shifted. Hisashi's team had 28,500 points, Arisu's 24,500. The tide turned instantly, and the cost was Suki's life. A laser beam fell from the sky, killing her on the spot. Arisu's team was now at a severe disadvantage. 3 members of the opposing team had over 10,000 points each. Dueling was out of the question. They would definitely lose. Their only option was to focus on finding items to overtake Hisashi's team in total points. But Hisashi anticipated this and led his team to search for items too. They quickly found one worth 500 points. At that moment, Usagi was in danger. She ran into Go, who had over 10,000 points. She was fast, but Go was just as quick and caught up to her in an instant. The scores changed again. Hisashi's team was now leading by 5,500 points. They soon found another item, widening the gap to 7,000 points. Their chances of winning were already slim, and then Kuina ran into Shiki. Instead of running, she chose to fight. Even if she lost 500 points, she wanted to disable Shiki. But reality was cruel. Shiki knew martial arts. Hisashi's team's lead grew to 8,000 points. Arisu hurried to find more items and finally found one, only to realize it was a trap. Shiki pressed the button first, gaining 3,000 points, and Hisashi arrived right after. Arisu finally realized the opposing team's base was unguarded. Hisashi had calculated everything. They didn't dare attack the base. Hisashi walked forward slowly and initiated a duel. Arisu lost, losing 500 points. Hisashi reminded him, "Don't see this as a game where you only care about winning or losing. See it as a battlefield where you only care about life or death." The group returned to their base to regroup. They were now trailing by 12,000 points. Even if they found all remaining items, they would only gain 2,500 points, nowhere near enough to win. Even if they sent Ryuta, who had over 10,000 points, to duel in a 2 versus 1 format, they could only win 500 points each time. With only 30 minutes left, this approach wouldn't work. Arisu started thinking from Hisashi's perspective. What would he do? Suddenly, he noticed the invalid state on his bracelet and thought back to Hisashi's words about life and death. He immediately had a plan, take a risk, and attack the opponent's base. If 2 of them could succeed, they could stage a comeback. The biggest difference between them and Hisashi's team was that they were held back by fear. Doing nothing meant certain death. Taking a risk only meant possible death. It was a risk worth taking. Ryuta stayed behind to guard their base while the others set off immediately. But Hisashi had anticipated this too. 4 of his team members stayed to guard their base, refusing to leave. Usagi came to provoke them. Go, being impulsive, saw that Usagi only had 50 points. If caught, she would die, and grew more and more agitated. He ignored his teammates' attempts to stop him and chased after Usagi. Soon after, Kuina appeared, followed by Arisu and Naragi. It was 3 versus 3. How would this fight go? The 3 touched their own base, amplifying their points infinitely. Anyone who approached would die. Meanwhile, Usagi had nowhere to run, and Go charged at her excitedly. Arisu's trio also rushed toward the base. Usagi jumped with all her strength onto a nearby shipping container. Go followed, but fell just short. Kuina reached the base first and moved Shiki out of the way. Arisu arrived second, but was grabbed by Hisashi. Luckily, Arisu was in the invalid state, and the electric shock sent both flying. Niragi, playing dirty, coughed up blood and took advantage of the chaos to touch the base, gaining 10,000 points. While still in the invalid state, he immediately tried to shock others. Shiki dodged, but Shiki didn't. Kuina hurried toward the base, but was kicked away by Shiki. Physical contact was made, and she lost 500 points. Hisashi's team was still leading by 3,000 points, with 20 minutes left. Were they doomed to wait for death? Usagi decided to keep looking for items. Even if she couldn't win, she wanted to comfort herself by fighting to the end. The others lost their will to fight and waited quietly for death. Usagi soon found an item, gaining 2,500 points and narrowing the gap to 500 points. Now, they only needed to win 1 duel to turn the tide. Arisu decided to take a risk and check the opponent's base. Usagi wanted to go too, but Naragi stopped her. Faced with death, Naragi had lost his mind. He no longer cared about teamwork, only wanting to die happily. His idea of happiness was to assault Usagi. Usagi fought back, but Niragi knocked her unconscious. Just as Niragi was about to act, Arisu rushed over, pulled him away, and vented his anger. He then carried Usagi back to their base, only to find Ryuta gone. Arisu was about to head to the opponent's base when he suddenly stopped and looked toward a spot. Hisashi was there. Hisashi had known he would come. Arisu knew he was sure to lose and wanted to shake Hisashi's hand before dying. Hisashi agreed, but reminded him the game wasn't over. Shaking hands would trigger a duel. During this game, Arisu had learned a lesson. He shouldn't just give orders to his teammates. He should listen to their opinions and care about their feelings. Hisashi was pleased to hear this. When their hands touched, the scores changed. Everyone looked at the big screen. Arisu's team had reversed the tide, leading by 500 points. Hisashi was shocked. How could Arisu's points be higher than his? The truth was, before coming, Ryuta had been harming himself. He'd come up with a plan. If Arisu secretly wore his bracelet, it would count as a 2-person point combination for the duel, allowing them to turn the tables. After all, the rules didn't say you couldn't take off a bracelet. Arisu hated the idea, but it was the only way to win. Was it better to sacrifice Ryuta's hand, or let everyone die? Arisu made his decision quickly. He reluctantly severed Ryuta's hand, took the bloodstained bracelet, and dueled Hisashi. This move was truly unexpected and ruthless, but Hisashi accepted his defeat gracefully. Arisu's team also had a good atmosphere. They had come this far as players, and without Hisashi's challenge, they might have died long ago. There was no need to complain. But this also made Arisu worry. Even if they cleared all games, they might not be able to leave. Hisashi could only tell him, "Believe in what you believe. That is the truth." Arisu felt confused. If he couldn't leave, what was the point of holding on? When the game ended, Arisu's team won. Hisashi faced death calmly, as did his teammates. The airship marked King of Clubs exploded. This victory had come at a great cost. Ryuta died from blood loss. As night fell, the Jack of Hearts game began at the prison. There was one spot left for participants. After putting on a collar, a random card suit would be displayed on the back of the collar. A young man got the club suit. Other participants gathered on the second floor, including Chishiya. Once the young man entered, the game started. Each person went into a separate cell and had to guess the suit on the back of their collar within 1 hour. If they guessed wrong or ran out of time, the collar would explode. The suit wasn't fixed, it changed every round. There were 20 participants total, and the Jack of Hearts was hiding among them. The game tested trust in others. It would continue every hour until the Jack of Hearts died. Using reflective objects to peek at the suit was forbidden, as was using violence or weapons to harm others. Chishiya quickly grasped the key, find the Jack of Hearts, and prevent them from guessing correctly. There was plenty of water and food here, enough to keep them going until death. Before entering the cells, participants could move freely. Someone suggested forming teams and not lying to each other to survive, but some agreed, while others refused. A participant asked Chishiya to cooperate, offering to share their suit information, but Chishiya refused. This wasn't the time to build trust. He wanted to observe first. Everyone either formed teams or paired up, and Chishiya joined one team. Soon, everyone knew their suits and entered their cells to guess. The first round passed, with everyone surviving. It seemed like good news, but it wasn't. If this continued, they would be trapped here forever, like serving a life sentence. There were only 2 ways to break the deadlock. Either the Jack of Hearts started killing, or the first person to panic started killing. Soon, a conflict broke out between a pair. The later arrival tricked the man sitting on the ground into telling a bald man his suit was club. Forced by the bald man's threats, the man complied, but the bald man's actual suit was diamond. He seemed destined to be the first to die. When the second round began, everyone entered their cells to guess. The bald man confidently said, "Club," and blood splattered everywhere. A girl in blue blamed the bald man's partner. Since he had lied and caused a death, he might be the Jack of Hearts. No one knew who the Jack was, so why not kill him? The idea was quickly supported. Chishiya watched silently. The bald man's partner joined the blue-clad girl's team. Everyone said his suit was Spade, but it was actually Heart. Chishiya didn't expose this. No surprises occurred, and the partner died in the 3rd round. By the 4th round, people were growing impatient and irrational, and betrayals became more frequent. The blue-clad girl took the lead. This time, she targeted a yellow-clad girl, lying that her suit was club. The yellow-clad girl was eliminated in the 4th round. This approach soon sowed distrust within the team. Who knew if they would be the next target? A participant in red said his suit was Spade, and others agreed, but he no longer trusted the team. He found a pair to confirm his suit, but people's hearts were unpredictable. His actual suit was Heart, but the pair lied and said it was Club, wanting to kill him. He was overjoyed, thinking he'd escaped death, but chose Club in the 5th round and died. 2 people died that round. The blue-clad girl wasn't among them, but some people began to fear, afraid to trust others. As time passed, more people died. By the 9th round, the blue-clad girl was in danger. The person who checked her suit accidentally said Diamond before quickly correcting it to Heart. The blue-clad girl immediately suspected a trick and incited others to eliminate that person. Both survived the 9th round. In the 10th round, the other person realized the danger and incited others to eliminate the blue-clad girl. Now, it was up to the 2 remaining team members to decide. They quickly agreed to eliminate both. Though they achieved their goal, they no longer trusted each other. Each feared the other would kill them. In the end, both died. As time went on, only 6 participants remained. The young man staying with Chishiya couldn't hold on. He hadn't expected human nature to be so evil. The 2 told each other their suits. His was Diamond, Chishiya's was Heart. When it came to the final choice, he broke down. Instead of saying Diamond, he chose another suit and escaped his suffering through death. With his departure, Chishiya was left alone. The remaining 4 were a couple and a pair, only he was on his own with a high chance of dying. He had to find a way to save himself. When the guy's partner came to get food, Chishiya went over to Sao Discord. He said he'd seen the guy in the newspaper. He was a murderer who had cruelly killed 4 women. Such a person couldn't be trusted. He might be the Jack of Hearts, and as the Jack's partner, she could end the game easily. Chishiya wanted to cooperate with her, sharing their suit information. It would do her no harm and help her confirm if the guy was lying. Chishiya first said his own suit was Spade, but when it was her turn, she hesitated. She didn't trust Chishiya. But not saying anything felt wrong. Before leaving, she told Chishiya his suit was Heart, but it was actually Diamond. She wanted to kill him. As soon as she walked out, she met the guy who asked what had happened. She lied, saying Chishiya was the Jack of Hearts and would die after this round. But since she had already lied, how could the guy trust her? The couple was led by the man who suspected the guy was suspicious. The first liar had been instigated by the guy. When the woman went to get food, Chishiya appeared again and used the same tactic on her. He first said her suit was Heart, then asked if his suit was Club. The woman only glanced at him and didn't answer. Chishiya wasn't worried. He had already planted the seed of doubt. It would soon bear fruit. He was confident he could end the game in this round. The couple confirmed their suits. The woman's was indeed Heart, which made her realize Chishiya hadn't lied. If Chishiya was telling the truth, then the man was suspicious. She looked at the man's suit, but lied and said it was Diamond. The same thing happened with the guy and his partner. The partner learned her actual suit was Spade and immediately suspected the guy lying that his suit was Spade. It was actually Heart. But Chishiya still had a problem. He had to guess his own suit. He couldn't trust the partner's lie about Heart, so he eliminated Heart. The woman had ignored him, so he eliminated Club. That left Diamond and Heart. But wait, he'd already eliminated Heart, so only Diamond remained? No, it was 50% chance, Diamond or Heart. The consequence of guessing wrong was death. Just thinking about it was thrilling. When the countdown ended, everyone announced their answers. The partner walked out of her cell first. Seeing no one else come out, she thought she'd won and laughed wildly. Chishiya walked out slowly. He'd long guessed the partner was the Jack of Hearts. The way she and the guy had formed a team so quickly wasn't something an ordinary person could do. The guy also walked out, just as Chishiya had said. Ordinary people wouldn't easily accept someone like him. The man came down from upstairs too. He had told the woman her correct suit, but she still died. Why? Because the woman had been controlled by the partner. Chishiya could prove this. The partner and the woman had always gone to get food one after another, using the color of their bags to share suit information and confirm if their teammates were lying. The woman had lied to the man in the end on the Jack of Hearts' orders. The guy knew the partner was the Jack of Hearts, but didn't expose her. He'd made a deal with the man to get information from her. The two were cut from the same cloth, both had tricks up their sleeves, and weren't afraid she'd stay silent. After the final round ended, Chishiya left the game venue, and the airship marked Jack of Hearts exploded. On the other side, Arisu was lost in confusion. If clearing all games meant he couldn't go back, what was the point of holding on? Should he become a citizen like Hisashi, making games and waiting for challengers? Kuina didn't want to give up. Though Hisashi hadn't said it outright, Arisu was sure they couldn't go back, but Kuina still wanted to fight to the end. She said goodbye to them and went to find Chishiya and Anne, who were separated from the group. Seeing Arisu in low spirits, Usagi took him to hunt for rabbits to improve their diet. They didn't catch any rabbits, but instead found a large group of dead players, all seemingly killed by the King of Spades. Near the bodies, they found a minivan with many photos, film reels, and a projector inside. They watched the reels. It was a documentary shot by a player over a month, recording life in the Borderland. In the footage, they saw Anne, who said she would go to the suburbs of Tokyo to investigate the secrets of the Borderland. Later, the filmmaker went to a community there to interview a player who remembered how they'd entered the Borderland, but the King of Spades suddenly appeared and shot everyone. The filmmaker was also killed, but before dying, he hoped someone would see this record of the Borderland. The footage ended there. As soon as they finished watching, the car shook violently as if something was approaching. They rolled down the window and were horrified to see the King of Spades. They ran immediately but were forced to split up. Arisu distracted the King of Spades to let Usagi escape. Just when he was cornered, a helper suddenly appeared and fought the King of Spades, but Arisu was knocked unconscious while running away. He woke up late at night. The person who had knocked him out was a woman with one leg missing. She said she'd only been told to knock him out. The person who had driven off the King of Spades was someone else. Arisu went to meet that person and was shocked to find it was Aguni. Aguni's goal was to kill the King of Spades. Arisu didn't want to get involved. Though he had no goal now, he still had the will to live. He didn't want to risk his life. He just wanted to find Usagi. But he had no choice. If he acted alone, he would be killed by the King of Spades before finding Usagi. Aguni already had a plan. Lure the King of Spades into the woods to take him down. But before they could find an ambush spot, they met a desperate man. His visa was about to expire, so he'd killed himself in advance. Hatter, the one-legged woman, despised people like this. When she first arrived in the Borderland, she'd participated in the Seven of Spades game. The ground split open and scalding water was everywhere. She'd lost her leg there, but had survived with her strong will. She'd happened to meet a doctor who could amputate her leg, but she had to pay a price. Money was useless here, so she could only offer herself. When it came to the will to live, she was stronger than Arisu. Soon after, Aguni found a suitable spot to ambush the King of Spades. First, they needed to set traps. Arisu couldn't help with that, so he was put on lookout duty, a job he wasn't good at. He got nervous at the slightest sound. The King of Spades soon appeared, but Arisu didn't notice he even fell asleep. The King of Spades had snuck behind him and was about to shoot when Aguni and Hatter launched their attack. Seeing the King of Spades fall, Aguni walked over slowly, only to realize it was a trap. Arisu finally understood what lookout meant. He was the bait. He had no choice but to play his part. Aguni quickly deduced that the King of Spades had combat experience. He might have been a mercenary. Arisu was far less experienced. Before he knew it, a grenade was at his feet. Thanks to Aguni's warning, he escaped but fell off a cliff. Aguni managed to get close to the King of Spades, but was soon outmatched. He only survived thanks to Hatter's help. As soon as they hid, Aguni fell unconscious. Hatter didn't dare make a sound, afraid of being discovered by the King of Spades. Luckily, the King of Spades didn't check closely, he just glanced from a distance and left. At dawn, Arisu climbed out of the water. Now without teammates, he had to act alone. He walked aimlessly until nightfall, when he found a tent. He thought it was Usagi, but it was a man. He kept walking, kept searching, and gradually became a wanderer. He went further and further, eventually reaching a place overgrown with plants. It looked abandoned for years. While he was searching for Usagi, Chishiya had cleared the Jack of Hearts game and was covered in injuries. Anne had trekked through mountains and rivers to find a strange place. Usagi had met a young child whose visa was about to expire. She took him to challenge the Queen of Spades. Arisu happened to find them there, and the two were finally reunited. In fact, Arisu hadn't been searching aimlessly. He had a method. Usagi was good at physical games, and now, apart from the King of Spades, only the Queen of Spades game remained. All participants entered the venue. The game was called General's Circle, a battle between the Queen of Spades team and the players' team. The players had a numerical advantage, 16 people, while the Queen of Spades team only had 4. The rules were simple. Each team chose a king. The Queen of Spades was naturally the king of her team, and she chose the young child to be the king of the players' team. The game had 16 rounds, with teams taking turns to attack and defend. For example, the Queen of Spades team went first as the red team attackers, and the players' team was the blue team. If an attacker pressed the button on a defender's back, the defender's vest would turn red. They couldn't move for the rest of the round and would join the red team in the next round. The color change rule didn't apply to the kings. Each round lasted 5 minutes. After 16 rounds, the team with more members won. The losing team, including the king, would die. The rules seemed simple, but there was plenty of room for strategy. Everyone put on their equipment, and the first round began. Instructions from the Queen of Spades team came from below, and everyone scattered to run. Usagi told the child to wait in place, then ran away with Arisu. Since it was the first round, no one had experience, everyone just focused on running. Though the Queen of Spades team was small, they were all elite fighters. In just 5 minutes, they caught 5 people, making the score 9-11 red team, blue team. Next, it was the blue team's turn to attack. Arisu's strategy was simple. Ignore the red team members and first get their own teammates back. They would definitely not run as actively as the red team. But Arisu forgot one thing. The rules didn't prohibit violence. What could the blue team do if they refused to run? The red team would just protect them. Arisu decided to split up. A siren would sound at the start of each new round, and they agreed on a meeting spot every time the siren rang. They would meet there to confirm their positions and avoid getting separated again. The game quickly reached the 5th round, with the score tied at 10-10. Some players had been intimidated by the Queen of Spades team and chose to obey, helping them catch others. The situation took a sharp turn for the worse. By the 10th round, the score was 14-6, red team. Things were now out of Arisu's control. The Queen of Spades' team had the upper hand, and even without violence, the players didn't want to switch back to the blue team. If they held on until the end, the blue team would lose. Why bother struggling? Everyone ran and chased frantically, and the score soon became 16-4. Members of the Queen of Spades team told the players that not struggling was the right choice. After the game ended, they could join the Queen of Spades team. As long as the Queen of Spades didn't die, the game would continue, and they could stay on as part of her team, no longer needing to participate in other games or hide from the King of Spades. The score reached 17-3. Only the king, the child, Arisu, and Usagi remained on the blue team. The others gave up, and the Queen of Spades suddenly announced she wanted to snatch Arisu, saying he was her prey. Her team immediately acted. She found Arisu quickly. Usagi saw her intention and told Arisu to run while she held the Queen of Spades back. But she couldn't hold on long. The Queen of Spades broke free easily, didn't even bother to press Usagi's button, and went straight for Arisu. But Usagi's persistence annoyed her. She beat Usagi until she lost the ability to fight. By the 14th round, Usagi had reunited with Arisu. The two hid secretly and caught 3 members of the Queen of Spades' team. Usagi knew the 3 wanted to win, but they shouldn't only care about winning, they also needed to think about how to return to the real world. What would winning this game bring? Working for the Queen of Spades here until they died? If they could turn the tide and defeat the powerful Queen of Spades, they could collect all face cards and return to the real world. What was so good about staying here? Even if they fought until the end, they would end up like the Queen of Spades, becoming citizens, making and participating in games, trapped in an endless cycle of killing. Some people thought this world was better than the real one, easier to survive in. Usagi didn't deny this, but she reminded them the real world was where they were born and raised. Even if it was cruel, it was their home, and it had its beautiful moments. Her words touched the 3 of them. The game entered the 15th round with the score 14-6 red team, blue team. They needed to win back at least 5 people to take the lead. Chasing one by one was unrealistic. They needed a trick. Meanwhile, the Queen of Spades gave an order: get Arisu on their team before the game ended and leave Usagi on the blue team to die. The intense chase began again. Arisu was the main target and was soon surrounded. Time was running out. Could he hold on until the 16th round? The Queen of Spades arrived just as her team was about to attack. Arisu took the initiative, grabbing a chain and jumping away. Usagi appeared at that moment. After landing, she immediately pressed the red team members' buttons and their teammates joined the counterattack. The tide turned instantly. The score became 19-1, with only the Queen of Spades to King left on the red team. The Queen of Spades accepted her defeat calmly. As Arisu had guessed, she had also started as a player, but she couldn't reveal the truth. Everyone would find out after all games ended. Under everyone's gaze, she jumped down, embracing death in the most free and relaxed way. After saying goodbye to everyone, Arisu and Usagi set off again. Before they knew it, they reached a ruin, the venue of the 7 of Spades game, where Hatter had lost her leg. The water there was warm, so they took off their clothes and soaked in it like a hot spring. The King of Diamonds game began. Chishiya was among the participants, and so was Kuzuryu, the second in command of the beach. He was the King of Diamonds. Including him, there were 5 participants total. The game was called Scale. The rules were simple. Each round, the 5 participants chose a number between 0 and 100 and entered it into their tablets. The computer would calculate the average of the 5 numbers, multiply it by 0.8, and the participant whose number was closest to this result would win the round. Winners kept their points, while losers lost 1 point. When a participant's points dropped to -10, they were eliminated, and the others continued until a final winner was chosen. A new rule was added each time a participant was eliminated. The first round began, and everyone chose their numbers. The man in the shirt chose 33, the woman in red chose 49, Kuzuryu chose 29, the greasy man chose 30, and Chishiya chose 32. The average was 32.8, multiplied by 0.8 gave 26.24, the closest was Kuzuryu. After the first round, the greasy man started calculating. If everyone chose 40, the average would be 40, multiplied by 0.8 was 32. If everyone made the same assumption, they would all choose 32, and recalculating with 32 gave 25.6. What if someone anticipated that? Recalculating with 26 gave 20.8. This could go on forever, with the numbers getting smaller and smaller. The woman in red thought the key was to guess the opponent's choices. If you could predict what others would choose, you could predict the result. Chishiya had a more advanced approach. Guessing others' psychology was useless. You needed to study their logic. The man in the shirt suddenly heard the sound of water. He looked up and saw the scale above his head was leaking water, but it wasn't water, it was sulfuric acid. Kuzuryu had named the game Scale, which suggested he had been a lawyer before. The venue was the Supreme Court, which confirmed this. The second round began, and everyone calculated frantically in their heads. The numbers they chose were 15, 21, 14, 16, 17, all much smaller than the previous round. The average was 16.6, multiplied by 0.8 was 13.28. Kuzuryu won again with even greater accuracy. At this rate, the numbers everyone chose would get smaller and smaller, even down to 0. Chishiya guessed that Kuzuryu wanted to use the game to reflect the value of life. Kuzuryu fell into a memory. 20 people living near a factory had died from environmental pollution. He had suggested proposing a reasonable compensation figure to reach a settlement with the factory, but his boss had taught him a lesson. There was no equality in this cruel world. The law wasn't used to protect the weak, but to arm the strong. His job wasn't to discuss fairness and justice, but to package unfair things as fair. The sound of the third round starting pulled him back to reality. The numbers chosen were 0, 100, 100, 1, 0. The average was 20.2, multiplied by 0.8 was 16.16. The closest was the woman in red. Chishiya's choice was confusing. Choosing 100 gave him almost no chance of winning, but he wanted to catch others off guard and disrupt their rhythm. By the 6th round, his choice of 100 finally won. In the 7th round, the numbers were 4, 30, 10, 0, 100, and the final result was 23. 0-4, the woman in red won again. The scores dropped to -7, -5, -3, -7, -6. Soon after, the greasy man's score reached -9, and the man in the shirt was also in a desperate situation with no way out. In the 10th round, the final result was 1.6. Kuzuryu, who had chosen 2, won. The man in the shirt and the greasy man's scores dropped to -10 instantly. Sulfuric acid poured down from above. The two were tied to their chairs and couldn't escape. At first, it was just a few drops, but soon it gushed down and they died in agony. According to the rules, eliminating 2 participants meant adding 2 new rules. 1. If 2 or more participants chose the same number, it would be deemed invalid, and each would lose 1 point. 2. If the winner's number was very close to the result, losers would lose 2 points. Now, everyone had to be more careful. The woman in red chose 0 first. Chishiya also chose 0, and Kuzuryu chose 0-3. 0 seconds were deemed invalid, and each lost 1 point. The scores dropped to -8, -5, -9. Chishiya would die if he lost one more round. The 3 chose numbers again. The final result was 22.93. Chishiya won, with an error so small it was negligible. The losers each lost 2 points, and the woman in red's score dropped to -10. Chishiya's win wasn't just luck, he had real skill. He had no way out with -9 points, while the woman in red still had a chance with -8 points. But she was stuck in her previous way of thinking, assuming Chishiya and Kuzuryu would choose the same number, and within 50, she thought the safest option was to choose a number over 50 to avoid overlapping. Next came elimination. Numbers between 90 to 100 were too extreme and easy to guess. 60 to 70 were also risky. Numbers people chose on a whim, 3, 5, 8, were eliminated. All prime numbers were eliminated. Then numbers related to daily life, for example, video game numbers, movie titles, brand logos, were eliminated. That left only 62 and 74. The rest was down to luck. The woman in red suddenly regretted it. She should have chosen 74. Sulfuric acid poured down, and only 2 participants remained. A new rule was added. If someone chose 0, the person who chose 100 would win. Chishiya quickly deduced, since the result was multiplied by 0.8, theoretically, the smaller the number, the higher the chance of winning. Originally, Kuzuryu would have a sure win if he chose 0, but with the new rule, Chishiya could win by choosing 100. Now, the only numbers to choose from were 0, 1, and 100. Kuzuryu had no sure win option, he just had more chances to guess wrong, unlike Chishiya, who would die if he guessed wrong once. Given the game was centered on fairness and the value of life, Chishiya felt sad. He had been a doctor before, but for some reason, he had given an organ that should have gone to a patient to a wealthy sponsor behind the hospital, causing the patient's death. He didn't think he deserved to win, so he openly said he would choose 100 and leave his fate in Kuzuryu's hands. Kuzuryu also had a story. When the beach was in crisis, he had wanted to stay, but someone had risked their life to save him. Now that he held the power to decide life or death, would he save or kill? He chose 0 to save. The two chose 100 and 0, respectively, tying the score at -9 versus -9. Entering the final round, Chishiya stuck to his choice of 100, leaving the power to decide life or death in Kuzuryu's hands. Kuzuryu thought of another memory. He had asked the beach's witch, a manager, why she insisted on participating in games herself. The answer was to prove to him that she would rather die for her ideals than follow his survival of the fittest rules and allow massacres to happen. Finally, Kuzuryu made his decision. He chose 0 again. Chishiya won, but Kuzuryu wasn't a loser. He had finally found the true meaning of life. Meanwhile, the Queen of Clubs game began, and Kuina and Anne met there. It was a game similar to snowball fights. The Jack of Clubs game was also ongoing. It involved climbing up ropes. The Jack of Diamonds game was Mahjong, with only 4 participants. The King of Hearts game was also taking place at the same time. Kuina and Anne successfully cleared the Queen of Clubs game, and other games ended one after another. Now, only two cards remained, the Queen of Hearts and the King of Spades. Everyone began gathering at these two venues. Arisu met Chishiya, but before they could talk, Naragi interrupted. Naragi's body was failing, and he wanted to go out with a bang. He threw a gun to Chishiya, now all three had weapons, and a fight could break out. Naragi said someone had to die today to end this. Arisu didn't want to fight and exposed himself to Naragi's gun. Naragi had almost given up, but Usagi's sudden appearance reignited his malice. Arisu had no choice but to shoot Naragi, but Naragi still managed to fire a shot before dying. It was blocked by Chishiya. Chishiya said a few heartfelt words to Arisu. He had once hated kindness, thinking it was all hypocrisy. Later, he realized it wasn't hatred, it was jealousy, because he had never had pure kindness himself. Just then, an airship appeared. The King of Spades had arrived. Gunshots rang out nearby, and Arisu and Usagi hurried to hide. Suddenly, they saw Kuina and Anne in the crowd and called them over, but didn't dare mention Chishiya's injury. The top priority was to kill the King of Spades, and they didn't need to do it themselves. A car crashed into the King of Spades, followed by an explosion. Everyone cheered, but gunshots rang out again. The King of Spades was unharmed. He threw off his cloak and mask and continued his massacre. Hatter arrived at that moment and joined the fight against the King of Spades. If Hatter was here, Aguni couldn't be far behind. Aguni quickly made a battle plan. The King of Spades was human, not a god. He would run out of bullets eventually. They would let him waste his ammo first, then attack when he reloaded. Kuina took out a bomb made by Chishiya for self-defense, but it wasn't powerful enough to hurt the King of Spades. There was a pharmacy nearby. If they filled the enclosed space with polyester glue, the fumes could amplify the explosion's power. Next, they divided the work. Arisu would ambush in the pharmacy and detonate the bomb. Aguni would be the bait to lure the King of Spades there. But the others underestimated the women. Kuina and Anne refused to be left out, saying women are no less than men and insisting on being baits too. The baits began drawing fire, creating an opportunity for Arisu. He rushed into the pharmacy to set up the trap. The King of Spades was lured by the women one after another and grew angry. He even took off his bulletproof vest. The gunfight soon turned into hand-to-hand combat. Aguni was quickly defeated. Hatter was shot repeatedly while saving him. Anne was also hit. Aguni charged forward with all his strength and gained the upper hand, but was soon shot. He still managed to rush forward and empty the King of Spades' ammo. Kuina rushed to help, but was stabbed several times. Usagi joined in too, but couldn't stop the King of Spades and was stabbed in the leg. The battle was extremely brutal. Aguni picked up a bullet and crawled toward a wall, but he was still no match for the King of Spades and fell to his gun. Just as the King of Spades was about to target Usagi, Arisu finally rushed out. He was heartbroken when he saw the scene, but didn't lose his mind. He turned and lured the King of Spades toward the pharmacy. The two were separated only by a door. When the King of Spades was about to open it, he hesitated. Suddenly, Aguni appeared from behind, grabbed him, and rushed into the pharmacy. He planned to sacrifice himself to kill the King of Spades, but Arisu couldn't bear to let him die and rushed to save him. The two crashed through the glass, Arisu threw the bomb, and Aguni fired a shot back. The powerful blast sent them flying. After regaining consciousness, Arisu checked on Usagi's injuries. Aguni looked at the pharmacy, now in ruins, and saw the King of Spades was still alive. He was tough, but had no more energy to fight. Instead, he handed his gun to Aguni, asking for a quick death. This scene reminded the King of Spades of the past. His comrade had once handed him a gun too, asking him to end his suffering. He had killed his comrade with tears in his eyes. Aguni had no feelings for the King of Spades, but thought it was unfair to let him die so easily. After dealing with the King of Spades, Aguni pointed the gun at himself. He wanted to atone for his sins in the afterlife and ask Hatter, the former leader of the beach, for forgiveness. But he seemed to see Hatter, who didn't blame him and told him to live well. The airship marked King of Spades exploded. Now, only the Queen of Hearts game remained, but very few participants were left. Arisu helped Usagi walk to the game venue and confessed in advance. If the rules required them to fight each other, he would protect her without hesitation. To their surprise, the Queen of Hearts was a woman in black appearing on a screen. The game was croquet, also called lawn bowls. The rules were simple. Regardless of winning or losing, as long as they finished 3 rounds, they would pass. They couldn't quit halfway. The first round ended quickly. It was easier than expected. Was the woman in black really giving them an easy pass? But in the second round, Arisu was confused. The woman in black started playing for herself, only caring about having fun and not playing seriously. She seemed to be stalling for time, and Usagi's leg was still bleeding. They didn't have much time left. Arisu had to do his best to end the game quickly. He finally finished the second round, but the woman in black delayed starting the third round and invited them to sit down and drink tea instead. Arisu took the opportunity to ask, If they passed this round, could they return to the real world? Usagi was worried it was a trap and told Arisu to talk less, ignore the woman in black, and focus on finishing the game. But the woman in black took the initiative to speak, saying she was willing to tell them the truth. She said this was the future world, strictly speaking. 1,000 years later, starting from their time, in 10 years, virtual reality technology would mature and become humanity's main way of life. In 50 years, all diseases would be curable. In 100 years, weather control and environmental regulation technologies would mature, eliminating natural disasters. In 200 years, due to a complete understanding of brain mechanisms, memory and consciousness transfer would be achieved. In 300 years, humans would no longer die from natural causes, with an average lifespan of 300 years. In 400 years, humans would fully master physics, understand all cause and effect, and be able to explain coincidences and fate with science. In 500 years, through complete control of everything, no unexpected events would ever happen again, and humans would be almost immortal. This shook Arisu's understanding. He suddenly noticed a hidden camera in the grass. Was this just a game, with their real bodies asleep somewhere? According to the woman in black, humans had achieved immortality and lost their reason to live, so they sought amusement in this virtual world. And she was just a system administrator. Seeing them lost in thought, the woman in black suddenly laughed and said she had made it all up. She then told another story. Plants had suddenly mutated and grown wildly, taking over all cities. Surrounded by mountains, the cities had become alien colonies. Aliens designed these games and forced humans to play them as an experiment. Another rumor circulated among players. A nuclear war had devastated the world. Rich people living underground had implanted false memories into robots, making them play games on the surface while betting on who would survive. Which version was true? Arisu thought she didn't know the truth at all. The woman in black shrugged and said, "Why did they need to know the truth?" By the way, she added, she had designed the Seven of Hearts game, the one that had cost Arisu his best friend. Arisu lost his temper instantly and pointed a gun at her. She just stared at him, daring him to shoot. After struggling for a long time, Arisu finally calmed down. He realized it was a trap. The woman in black was deliberately provoking him to kill her, which would make the game never end. Other players would only wait for their visas to expire and die. The woman in black brought up the truth again, calling it her weakness. She said this world was an illusion. The desolate cities, advanced technology, and absurd games were all Arisu's imagination. Whether it was future humans or aliens, what was their motive for creating these games? To put it simply, it was all Arisu's fantasy. Seeing Arisu start to believe her, Usagi hurried to persuade him. If it was all a fantasy, what was she? She was a real person. The woman in black continued to manipulate Arisu, telling him to think about what had happened when he lost his best friend. He had been so grief-stricken that he lost his memory, and she was his psychiatrist. He was receiving treatment. Arisu froze as if what she said was true. And Usagi was in the same situation, also receiving treatment. He remembered the day of the fireworks. He had been running around the streets with his best friend. They had looked up at the fireworks, and then his friend had been hit by a car. He couldn't accept it, so he had imagined these absurd games. Through repeated struggles to survive and repeated losses, he had been searching for the meaning of life, which was also the problem he faced in reality. He couldn't find the meaning of life, so he wasted his time and lived a meaningless existence. Usagi suddenly rushed over to wake him up, but the woman in black stopped her. Now Arisu had to make a choice. Should he end everything? Usagi suddenly realized it was gaslighting. The woman in black wanted Arisu to quit the game halfway, but Arisu was already immersed in the illusion and couldn't pull himself out. The woman in black gave him a pill to calm down and told him to make his choice after taking it. Just as the pill was about to reach his mouth, Usagi rushed over to stop him. She picked up a shard of glass and pointed it at the woman in black, telling Arisu to wake up and remember what he had said before the game. He would protect her no matter what. As she spoke, she cut her wrist to prove she was real. But Arisu didn't react at all. He was still trapped in the world the woman in black had created. Watching Usagi gradually lose consciousness, the woman in black smiled cruelly and asked Arisu if he wanted to quit the game. She smiled even wider as she watched Arisu reach for the pill, but the script didn't go as she planned. Arisu's hand passed the pill and grabbed Usagi instead. The woman in black had finally failed, not defeated by Arisu or Usagi, but by their love. The third round began, and the woman in black won. The game ended, and Arisu finally cleared this last round. A polar light fell from the sky, the woman in black's airship exploded, and fireworks filled the night sky. A voice echoed from the sky, asking all survivors to choose: accept permanent citizenship in this world and gain the right to live here forever, or refuse. Aguni chose to refuse, Hatter chose to refuse, Kuina chose to refuse, Anne, who had died, couldn't give an answer. The young man and the man who had won the King of Hearts game chose to accept this world suited them better. Chishiya chose to refuse. Niragi, though dead, also refused. Usagi, who had survived despite heavy bleeding, chose to refuse without hesitation. Arisu naturally chose to refuse too. But the system only asked, accept or refuse. It didn't say what would happen if they refused. In the blink of an eye, Arisu returned to reality. Kiyoshi, the blonde guy, was right in front of him, and Taichi was there too. Watching the two laughing and joking, Arisu said, "I'm sorry." The three walked onto the street, and Usagi was nearby. Kiyoshi lifted Arisu onto his shoulders and ran toward the bustling crowd. Niragi was nearby, Kuina walked past, and Chishiya Hatter, the former beach leader, Aguni and Ryuta were also there. Then, the three crossed the road, fireworks appeared in the sky, and Anne walked past them. Hatter, the one-legged woman, looked up at the sky with everyone else. A meteor streaked across the sky and hit the building Arisu had entered earlier. Then came an earth-shattering explosion, causing heavy casualties. Arisu was lucky to survive, but Kiyoshi and Taichi died. When the rescue team found Arisu, his heart had stopped beating for a full minute. Could the world in the games have been an illusion he had imagined in that 1 minute? Chishiya was also a survivor. His heart had also stopped for a minute. Hatter had lost one leg, Aguni was unconscious, Anne had narrowly escaped death and been rescued, Kuina was also a survivor. The victims were almost all people who had participated in the games, and the survivors were all those who had cleared the games. Arisu and Usagi met by chance in the hospital. They felt a sense of familiarity with each other, but couldn't remember where they had met. A gust of wind blew, scattering the playing cards on the table. Only a joker remained in place. Had the game not ended yet? Would the people who had chosen to refuse have to start challenging the joker?